Welcome, one and all, to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, and this week I have a very special guest, Jeffrey Daugherty, from his web address is christianwhistleblower.com. How you doing, Jeffrey?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thank you for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight.
Well, you're my first official Christian guest on my show. I mean, I'm very happy to have you here. A big part of my paradigm is trienergetics, and one of the most important aspects of being happy and feeling fulfilled is having a good connection to Source. And I don't judge people on how they choose Source, but I mean, being a good Christian certainly fits into that model. So I was very impressed hearing you on George Noory the other day, and I thought I'd bring you in to explore your very unique view of Christianity.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian, and I probably am at the place in my life where I would probably not self-identify as Christian any longer. I try to stay away from labels and things of that nature. I would prefer to classify myself as a person that does everything that he can to follow the original teachings of Yeshua of Nazareth.
Okay, great. That's a good way of setting yourself apart and showing that you have a unique message. I'm all for that. Okay, so that's very interesting. So why don't you give the listener a bit of your background and bio? I understand you've been part of the Christian church in different forms throughout the last 30 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent 20 years as your stereotypical red-hot, blood-bought, devil-chasing, sin-killing Pentecostal evangelist. I was 30 years full-time, or actually 20 years a full-time minister with three of the largest Protestant denominations in the world. And when that came to an end, I've now spent the 10 years since that, branching out into what I would call less dogmatic type of spiritual experience. I think I saw what I identify as the cracks in big-time religion and set off to find my own answers, and it's led me across the spectrum of spirituality, and I really like the place where I am right now.
Beautiful. So you're sort of like a smallest beautiful Christian in my books.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you've looked at the Bible and you've interpreted it in a way that works for you, and you're offering it out to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. When I first came out of, quote unquote, monolithic Christianity, I was started what I called New Covenant Kabbalah, because I found so much of the Kabbalistic teachings in the message of Yeshua, and then as I began to study further, I realized that was only a portion of what was in the message of Yeshua. So now, what started out as NC or New Covenant Kabbalah has now expanded into what I'm calling New Cosmic Knowledge, which is really a growing and expanding body of spiritual techniques, spiritual technologies, and we hope spiritual truths that are all designed to help people create themselves and learn the ways and the truths that lead to life and life more abundantly.
Wow. That sounds good to me. I like that message. I like that message. As we were talking a bit offline there before, I mean, I think we all connect differently to Source. We need a number of techniques. I think we could have thousands of religions on this planet. I think religion is affected by geography, all sorts of factors. And the Bible, it can be interpreted in so many different ways and fashions. And if people want to be, fundamentalist, whatever, but now you're expanding your horizons. And I think that shows that you're growing spiritually.
Well, I think it at least shows that I'm attempting to do so. So I feel pretty good about that, Brian.
Okay. All right. So the Christian Whistleblower moniker, what does that relate to? Why whistleblower?
Well, the Christian Whistleblower is something that was suggested to me. It was said of me several times, and the more I thought of it, and the more I pondered it, the more I liked it. So I've taken it on, and I also get called the Edward Snowden of the New Testament, and I don't know if that's always in a complimentary fashion, but if you look at what a whistleblower is, and of course Mr. Snowden's a great example of it modern-wise, what a whistleblower is. I mean, Snowden was a member of the intelligence community. He was someone that was working for, the government of the United States, was very intimately involved in the inner workings of the government, believed in the government, believed in the United States. He was not in any way, shape, or form against the USA. He wasn't an anarchist. He wasn't someone that wanted to bring down the United States. He loved the United States. He worked for the United States. It was his life. But then when he found things that were being done covertly, and things that were being done, behind people's backs, so to speak, and things that were being done and perpetrated upon the American people that were wholly inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, at least in his view, that were wholly inconsistent with the original ideas of our framers and founders, speaking as an American. He felt compelled to speak out, and to, he felt like he couldn't be silent anymore. He had to make known what he considered nefarious deeds being perpetrated behind the scenes of the American government. And in similar fashion, to continue that analogy, I was 20 years as a Protestant minister. I'm a Bible college graduate. I've preached in many, many different countries. I've preached in many, many different situations. And, it was my life. It was my job. I dedicated my life to the church. I believed in the Christian church. I remember when I first got my license with the Assemblies of God, I thought I was at the very center of the move of God on planet Earth, and I felt that with everything within me. I was 100% committed, 100% in support of the church, and doing everything I could to spread what I saw as the greatest message in the world at that time. And as I began to see things that were being taught by the church that did not line up, at least in my view, with the scriptures, I came to a junction where I had to come to a place in my mind where I was either going to follow the dictates and teachings of what I call big-time religion, the Christian church, Roman Christianity, Roman Catholicism, Roman Protestantism, or follow the teachings, the original teachings of who most people call Jesus. I call him Yeshua. And I came to the place where, at least in my mind, that I 100% believed and continue to believe that what is presented today as Christianity, and its Roman Catholicism and Roman Protestant forms, is really a co-opted version of the message of Yeshua, a message that was intended to be liberating, a message that was intended to promote individual freedom and development, and has now been co-opted and turned into a matrix of control based on fear and guilt. So like Mr. Snowden and his experience within the inner workings of the American government, I found myself in a very similar situation within the workings of the Christian religion. So thus you have, long answer to a short question, the Christian whistleblower.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer, man. Beautiful. I like that answer.
I've never been asked that before, Brian. In all the interviews I've done, no one's ever asked me that. It's a great question.
Oh, okay. Well, I try to be unique. I don't know if I always
great job, my friend.
I don't know if I always achieve my goal, but I just go with the flow, and they just come to me as I go along. But hey, Yeshua. Why Yeshua? Is it Yeshua? Am I saying it right?
Well, that's. I believe it's pronounced Yeshua, and the reason why. If the man that was born in Nazareth, and we know as Jesus, if he walked into Studio B right now and extended his hand and said, "Hi, Brian," he would say, "Hi, my name is Yeshua." He wouldn't say Jesus, because his name wasn't Jesus. Jesus, of course, is a Greek English rendering of a Greek rendering of a Hebrew name. And of course, back in the days, this was before the 1600s, there actually wasn't even a J So his name was definitely Yeshua. It's probably Yahashua, but we're friends, so I call him Yeshua for short. But there's a much deeper answer to that question, and I believe that the name Jesus, and this is, you asked the question, so I'll answer it. I believe that name Jesus, and here's another thing. If you watch Univision or watch a different language television station, watch the news in German, watch the news in Spanish, watch the news in any other language, and you'll hear them talking, and when I say blah, 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 I don't mean to belittle their language, but you'll hear blah, 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 Barack Obama. You'll hear blah, 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 Donald Trump, blah, 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 George Bush. And the proper names are never translated from their original language into they don't call George Bush whatever it would be. The equivalent would be in Spanish. So I think we should give the same respect to the man from Nazareth. But also I think that the name Jesus has become so connected to the co-opted religion that when you say the name Jesus, it throws you into cognitive dissonance. It almost is like a magic word or a gateway word. And when Jesus is said, it automatically puts you into that old paradigm and makes it more difficult for you to understand a new paradigm. It's like Mark Twain said, it's much easier to convince people of a lie than it is to convince them that they've been lied to. So for those reasons, again, long answer to a short question. That's why I use Yeshua rather than Jesus.
Yeah, it sort of helps people tune into a different interpretation of the Bible.
Very well stated. Very well stated.
And you think it's a more authentic interpretation. That's something else we were talking about. To me, a person is, their character comes from their deeds and not from what they say.
That's what the Apostle James said.
Yeah, I mean, it's so clear. I mean, and it's such a clear problem in that we seem to live in a world now where people don't even see contradiction anymore.
That's very well stated. I 100% agree with you. And it's my job, as I see it, is not to convince anyone of anything, because as the old adage says, a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And I came to a realization that even if, and this is back when I was a Pentecostal preacher, I came to the realization that even if someone changes their beliefs because of my convincing them to do so, that's really not what the divine is looking for. The divine is looking, that's indoctrination. What the divine is looking for is enlightenment, and that's when a person of their own volition, by reviewing information presented, will arrive at their own conclusions and make their own decisions. So I guess the real central problem for me is that the big-time religion, aka Christianity, is all about indoctrination, and I'm trying to bring a message and a movement towards enlightenment.
Oh, I mean, it sounds awesome to me. I mean, I'm always, I was brought up a Roman Catholic, and I mean, it scared me. I used to go to catechism, and they used to put me in this car with these people that were like, they were like a million miles away. I didn't feel any love. I didn't feel any connection to anything, and I couldn't wait to get home. To me, it was like being punished in school, going to that church. So So is your message one of what would you say are the key? God, this is a tough question maybe for you, but what would be the key messages of Yeshua for the world?
That's a great question, and it's remarkably simple, I think. I think the key message of Yeshua for the world, and especially as contrasted with the message of Christianity, is that Christianity, really one of the foundational, probably the foundational doctrine is the concept of original sin. From the time you take your first breath, you're filled with sin. You're fallen, you're flawed, you're dirty, you're rotten, you're black. You are a sinner in need of a Savior. And Yeshua actually taught that the kingdom of heaven is inside you, and he taught that rather than being filled with original sin, we have the spark of divinity within. So the central message of Yeshua is, hey, you have the spark of divinity within you, and while Christianity teaches, hey, you're born a sinner, you have to come to us and do what we say, how we say, when we say, where we say, as often as we say, and you must stay in alignment with us if you hope to get this sin forgiven, because we're the only ones that can do it, and you have to not only get your sin forgiven, but you have to keep minding your P's and Q's so you can get to this place called heaven, of which we are the arbiters of entrance. And Yeshua says, hey, you are a being created in the image of the divine. You have the spark of divinity within you, and I, Yeshua, have come with the message of the way and the truth which leads to life. And if we really get into the original Greek, we understand that Yeshua was saying, I have brought you the best of all the ways of human spirituality. I have brought you all the best of the truths of human spirituality. And I've shown you a path that if you decide to walk down it, it will lead you not only to life, but life more abundantly. And Brian, I have a sneaking suspicion that, and it's kind of implicit within the text, but it's not completely explicit, so I can't jump up and down on it and say this is the way it is. But I have a sneaking suspicion that not only did Yeshua bring us the best of all the ways of human spirituality, the best of all the truths of human spirituality, but he also brought us, I think, ways and truths from beyond the human experience and certainly beyond our concept of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's some pretty interesting concepts in the Bible. I have a friend, I met him through my show, Warren Trammell. He studies the Bible every week in a Bible group, and I think he's pretty progressive. I think he's in tune with what you're saying, a lot of it anyways. And he said that there's parts of the Bible where he say there are things in heaven that we cannot even imagine.
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, it's so incredibly mind-blowing. After I went to a shamanic weekend with a guy named Alberto Valoldo, I came back home, and 3 days later I had this incredible experience. I'm waking up in the morning, and my body felt like a spaceship. You know the what's that science fiction, Star Trek, where they have that transportation system where you dematerialize and rematerialize?
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I felt like. My body was like like atomized, and it was an incredibly powerful experience. And yeah, to me, that's the closest I think I've been to the other side. Yeah, it was quite amazing. I think there's many ways to get to God, and I don't think there'd be too much difference between someone like Yeshua and these shamans. I'll tell you right now. I mean, there's many paths to the great Creator, and many names. But we're here to talk about your message. I just thought I'd share that because that's been I don't know if there's anything in the Bible that talks about an experience like that.
Well, I think it's very accurate that if you really describe, if you look for Jesus, the guy that we've all been taught about and the guy that we all look for, if you look for him in secular, non-biblical history, it's very, very hard to find even a shred of his existence. There's 3 or 4 little historical snippets, and upon examination, they all seem to be secondhand at best. I mean, the first of them around 100 A.D., and it's really something that's being quoted by someone that was told something by a Christian. When you have people that were alive during that time that chose not to write about him, which would be almost beyond belief. But the thing that really showed me about Yeshua is, we have all these fights about, when was he born, where was he born, when did he die, how did he die, what did he look like, all of these things about him. And we have a gospel that's about Jesus, about Yeshua. But Yeshua said something remarkable. He said, my flesh profits nothing. And if you look at that in the original Greek, he says, all things pertaining to my life, my body, and my experiences on the earth, he said, are worthless. The word is worthless. It is the words that I spoke. My message is spirit, and it is life. And yet Christianity focuses so much on what he did, where he did, how he did. And Yeshua is saying, look, you're missing the whole point. So, Brian, if they found the skeleton of Yeshua of Nazareth tomorrow, if they proved tomorrow that Yeshua of Nazareth never existed and that this message has just coalesced around a figure, if they found that he never existed, that wouldn't bother me, because he said my life, my physicality, the things I did don't really matter. It's my message, and you can't deny the reality of the message of Yeshua of Nazareth, nor can you deny its ability some 2,000 years later to be transformational in the lives of those that apply it.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in living love. I don't believe in talking about it. I spent my life working with difficult children. I've done all sorts of things. I've fought against what I consider to be the dark side, which in a lot of ways is just administrative nonsense and people trying to take over your life and not trusting your decisions. And talk about control. It's everywhere. Over control of everything and everyone. Nobody trusting anyone to make any decisions on their own. It's all got to be written in a book somewhere or some administrative procedure or whatever. And I think you're sort of alluding to that in terms of your view of what Christianity is. And I discovered the spark, and it's been leading me all my life. And
absolutely. So
that's what it's about, brother. I mean, finding the spark and living it, living truth.
I couldn't agree with you more, Brian. I'm absolutely on the same page with you.
I mean, you've done some amazing stuff. I heard you saying that you've actually helped people escape spiritual influence, like exorcism, things of that sort.
Oh yeah, again, I spent 20 years as a Pentecostal evangelist, and I mean that's one of the things that you're expected to do. Fish swim in water, and Pentecostal evangelists cast out demons. That's just the way it goes. So, for 20 years, I was involved in that side of exorcism, if you will, casting out demons. And then in the 10 years since then, I'd like to believe that I have progressed and evolved in my understanding of that practice. But today I still am very much involved in the work that I would now call paranormal cleansing and freeing people from entities, and taking it a step further and realizing that now that the person is free, now that the place is free, what about the entities? Shouldn't we at least address that entity, see what their situation is, see if they need help them to get to where they're supposed to go, and if they don't want to go, okay, but if they want to continue to be acting in a malevolent fashion towards the living, then I feel that it's incumbent upon us to, escort them to another place where they can't be harming those that are still living.
So you're trying to reform the lost soul that's interfering in this other person's life.
Well,
I like that.
Well, when I was an evangelist, we cast out demons, and I mean, I would go and preach at a church for 2 or 3 weeks, and typically it would be every night. So I'm preaching, typically between 14 and 21 days in a row. And when you're a Pentecostal evangelist, you preach for about an hour, and then the real work starts, because people line up down the middle aisle of the church, and you'll be there. If you preach for an hour, you're usually there praying for people, doing healings, casting out demons for another 2 hours. So in any given week, I would probably cast out 20 to 100 demons. So, I mean, multiply that over, 52 weeks in a year, and over 20 years, that's a lot of demons. And I can't remember when, but I came to the realization of, where are all these demons going that we're casting out? And I did a lot of study on that, and then it was just about 5 years ago where I started thinking, you know what? Why are we not dealing with what I then would still call a demon? And at that time I was talking about demonic regeneration is the moniker that I put on it. And since then, I've come to the realization through science and just through logic and through deeper spiritual study that, everything really is energy, and
absolutely,
including what we would call demons. It's really not bad energy, good energy. Energy is energy, and the question is it balanced energy or is it unbalanced energy? And now I believe that we can help unbalanced energy to come back into balance, and then when unbalanced energy comes back into balance, we don't have anything left to call a demon anymore.
Well, can I just contrast what you're saying with the shamanic tradition just briefly?
Absolutely.
You can buy into some of this or relate to it. In the shamanic tradition, most people they consider themselves possessed, they're being influenced by a deceased relative. And what they do is when they die, they get confused. They see a light nearby, and often the person who is nearby has a good aura. So they mistake the light of heaven or the higher level with this other person. So they go into that light, and they in that way they corrupt in a way that person, because they're not supposed to be in you. They're supposed to go to the higher light, right, back to heaven, God, or whatever you want to call it. And so what the shaman does is he sees this. They have the ability to see auras and all these energy systems of the body, and they coax the spirit out and they put it in a crystal. And then they take this crystal and they say to the person, okay, carry this for 2 or 3 days, make your peace with this relative. And then after that, they release the spirit, and they help it go to the light or to the higher level or whatever energy. My theory on energy is that we go to the energy that we project, or that we perfect, hopefully perfecting our energy and not corrupting it, the perfection of our energy through lifetimes, we go to where we're supposed to go. We're attracted to the energy that we have within us. I think within your system it may be one lifetime. With me, it's more than one lifetime, right? You believe that Yeshua gave you the power to go do everything, learn all the tricks, all the wisdom in one lifetime, right? Is that what you think is unique about Yeshua?
It's interesting that you say that, and let me. I have something for you to try on in regards to what you just said.
Comment first about the shamanic thing. Is there anything?
Exactly. Yeah. The thing that I think that, and I do have some very good friends that are shaman, and I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I believe that there are some entities out there that are malevolent. There are some entities out there, whether they be ETs or whatever they are, that are malevolent and act with malevolent intent towards people. But I am convinced that the vast majority of us will never deal with anything like that. And it's interesting that you talk about past lives, because I'm convinced that 99.9999999% of what we deal with that we would call demonic or unclean or whatever you want to call it is really energy that we ourselves have unbalanced, either previously in our life's work during this life or in previous lifetimes. And that energy that was unbalanced by us will naturally seek us out to be rebalanced. It's like a salmon swimming upstream. And while I can help Brian Porter, and in some cases can balance energy that Brian Porter has unbalanced, the best way is for Brian Porter to realize that what is coming to him looks scary, sounds scary, because it knows who you are, knows what you think, knows what scares you, may have come to a point of sentience where it doesn't want to be rebalanced, but yet most of what we're dealing with that we call demons really aren't demons. It's just energy that we have unbalanced that has gained some sentience, and now we're here, like the shamans speak about, we're here really to balance energy that we ourselves have unbalanced in this life or in past lives to a great degree. So I'm with you on the shamanic tradition and maybe expanding it in a different direction a little bit.
Well, definitely. I mean, past lives are big, and they can also heal by taking you to future lives, which is pretty cool.
Now that I haven't traveled down that path yet.
Yeah, Alberto Villoldo. You might want to check him out. He's a pretty amazing guy.
Absolutely.
That's the guy I went to, and I had this amazing pure energy experience. I mean, it's really, I recommend it for anyone if you can go there. It's pretty neat.
Excellent.
Yeah. So what? Oh yeah. So it was. The issue of you said this. I heard you say this in one of your interviews that you felt that if you really tuned into Yeshua, that you could finish everything in one life.
Yeah, I think that the unique aspect of the message of Yeshua is that until he came, it probably was not possible to reach our full ascension within the span of a single lifetime. And Yeshua talked with the man named Nicodemus about this in John chapter 3. And Nicodemus was saying, there's no way, man. There's no way that a guy can understand, how to get back to source because, number one, he's never been to source. And then Yeshua said, well, what if someone that had been at source came down and showed you the way back to source? So I personally believe and teach and practice that Yeshua, one of the most unique and amazing parts of his teaching and ministry was that he has shown us a way to achieve our ascension back to source within the span of a single human lifetime.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't judge other people's view of the source. I think it's important to have a strong connection. And, I mean, if it works for you, brother, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, I want people to be connected. You know what I mean? I want it to inspire them in their lives. And I think what I try to do is connect people with the system that will work best for them. Not for me, but for them. Because we're all at different levels, right? And
That's a good
I think
point.
somebody needed what you used to offer. You used to offer a very directed spirituality. I am the teacher. Let's do this, and we will help you get there. Now you've changed because I think in life, if you really want to grow, you're going to develop different ideas and growth. And now you're offering. You have some. See, what you offer now. You've evolved not just spiritually but intellectually, and you're offering something something to a Christian who's also evolved intellectually. Maybe somebody who's studied the Bible and looked at the historical books before the Bible. I think I heard you talk about that too, right? You talked about the fact that the Bible is actually based upon many other religious texts that go back in history.
Absolutely.
I think you referenced 50 different texts or something that it's based on.
Oh, I think there's probably at least 50. I mean, if you look at the oldest parts of the Bible, of course, being in the Old Testament, Genesis, Job, Daniel, they're replete with references to other epic literatures, epic sacred literature, and it's very clear that one of the big problems that Christianity has is you have a polytheistic worldview being jammed into a monotheistic hole, and you got the classic round peg trying to be jammed into a square hole because the early writers of the Bible were writing from a thoroughly polytheistic point of view, just like all of the other writers of epic literature were, and the thing really started to get off the tracks when we decided, we being collective, decided that we have to try to mangle this polytheistic worldview into a monotheistic one.
Yeah, and you're more polytheistic now? Is that's your view?
Well, I happen to agree now with the first verse of the Bible. The first sentence in the Bible is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And if you break that down into the original Hebrew, it very clearly says, in the beginning, the Elohim being defined in Strong's Concordance as gods and goddesses, male and female deities. So the Bible clearly states from Genesis 1:1 that the earth, the world, the heavens and the earth were created by the gods and goddesses, the Elohim.
Beautiful. I mean, I can't believe we're completely in line on that one. Yeah, because I mean, I tell people, it's funny because I had this experience with this angel. I told you about that. And then I'm on this show with one of my buddies about 6 months ago. And I said, I don't know where she went, but he says, no, she's still with your brother and you should be talking to her. And so ever since I adopted the view that she's still with me, she's come back. And I don't see her like I saw her that day, at night. But I still feel her presence and her guidance. And it's a beautiful thing. And there are many creator beings in this universe. I mean, it's full of, there's a lot more positive than negative in this universe. I'm completely in concordance with you.
I agree. I like it.
Yeah, and we just got to connect with that, like I say, through a divine spark, connect with it and work with it. And maybe some people can get there in one life. I mean, I'm not going to dispute what you're saying. I'm just saying I think most people take more than one. I think there's a lot of things to learn.
I don't think that can be disputed. I would say that's a observable constant that most people do take more than one lifetime.
Yeah, and
but there's hope, Brian, through the message and teachings of Yeshua that we can do it in a single lifetime. I hold that out as a hope and as a goal and as something to aim for and shoot at as we follow the ways and the truths that lead to life and that more abundantly.
Well, I like his love message because I believe that love is the source, the basic fundamental energy of the higher realm is love.
I would agree with that.
It becomes informed with knowledge, perfect knowledge, and then that's what these creator beings are connected with, the perfect knowledge. But it all starts, if we don't love one another, how can we work together? How can we create something together if we don't love one another? You can't work with people if you don't love them. No,
you can't. And I something that keeps popping up into my mind, and it comes seemingly out of left field. When you think about, Aleister Crowley, you talk about coming out of left field. Aleister Crowley and his school of thought that's called Thelema. Their great law is that do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. And when you just look at that, it makes you. It seems like it's very selfish and it's very imposing on others. But really, if you break it down, and I've done some study along this line, what he was really saying was if you do what you're supposed to do, what you're called to do, what you believe that you are to be and to do, and allow other people to do what they believe they are called to be and to do, that my true basic purpose is a unique basic purpose, and it will never conflict with the basic purpose of Brian Porter or anyone else. And if we all are doing what we are supposed to do, then we will never conflict with one another. We'll never be taking away from one another. And in the end, we all will be working together into a perfect whole. So, whether we believe everything that Mr. Crowley taught or not, that is, at least in my estimation, a profound truth that is really analogous to the golden rule that was taught by Yeshua. And that concept is, you can say it's ubiquitous within many great spiritual paths.
Yeah, we can find our own path, and if we love everybody around us, then one of the things is we don't want to interfere with other people's paths. When we're in synchronous, it's a beautiful thing. We can work together, we can learn from each other, but when we find we need to go in different directions, then that's good too. But if we respect each other's spiritual development, this is a key. I think is this not part of the Bible? Is that not a message in the Bible?
Well, that's the message of Yeshua, but the message of Christianity is our way or the highway. Heaven or hell, turn or burn, very literally. So there again, you have the distinct contrast between what Yeshua taught and what Pauline Christianity has taught since about 60 A.D.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Aleister Crowley because what I know about him, maybe that's the only good thing he ever said. Because man, that guy was into some pretty weird stuff.
He was into some pretty weird stuff. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It just goes to show you, Brian. Every blind squirrel can find a nut every now and then.
No, it's I don't. I think he's actually responsible for a lot of the problems we're having in California now, and a lot of the issues with rejection of the family values, even trying to get rid of the word mother and father. And there's some bad spiritual stuff going on in California. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not real familiar with what's going on in California, to be frank with you. I'm in Florida, so they're 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, there's a lot of government nonsense about trying to get rid of the notion of mother and father, the gay agenda, and I love everyone, so I'm not against gay people, but the gay people are in the minority, and they shouldn't be going around telling people that we shouldn't use the term mother and father because it makes gay people feel uncomfortable.
That seems rather silly to me.
Yeah, that's part of the agenda, and this is not healthy for our species, in my opinion, or spiritually. So, just getting off track a bit there, but so one of the questions I had for you. Oh God, my computer just went off on me here. Just a sec. It went into sleep mode here. I lost my text.
Always at the worst time possible.
Murphy's Laws in full effect. I've never done this before. Here, just a sec here. Well, it was about Paul being the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
Apostle Paul. Okay, there it's come back. Yeah. So, can you elaborate on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. The title of my first book was Apostle Paul Antichrist, and that book actually had a foreword by George Norrie, so had a few people read it. And the title of the book it's not misleading, but I mean, I am an author, and I was trying to help people, and I was trying. You can't help somebody with a book if you can't get a person to pick up a book. So, Apostle Paul Antichrist is obviously kind of shocking. It's maybe a little bit sensationalistic, but it was meant to get people to pick up the book. But within the book, you find that the term Apostle Paul Antichrist, and the term Antichrist has been so perverted by big-time religion. When you hear the word Antichrist, you think of Damien, you think the Omen, you think the Exorcist, you think of some great end-time boogeyman. But in biblical terms, the word Antichrist just means against the message of the Christ. And Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, of course, author of the Declaration of Independence, said that Paul was the great Coryphaeus, or the first corrupter of the doctrines of Yeshua. So it's in that sense that the Apostle Paul was the Antichrist. He was the first Antichrist. He was the first one to corrupt and co-opt the original teachings of Yeshua. And now, of course, there's been many Antichrists, and you could say there's an Antichrist system, but we're not talking about a pin the tail on the Antichrist. Is it Obama? Is it Nero? Is it Reagan? Blah, blah, blah. We're talking about the original person to be in opposition to the message of Christ. And in that sense, Apostle Paul was the Antichrist.
Okay. Well, I heard you also say that, we're completely in agreement on this one, is that money is the Antichrist in a lot of ways.
Well, money's actually the mark of the beast. George Norrie asked me the last time I was on Coast, he said, well, Jeffrey, what is the mark of the beast? And it almost makes me, it used to irritate me, but now it just makes me shake my head and kind of, chuckle sarcastically. This whole thing about mark of the beast, I mean, the scare tactics and the fearful imagery and the horrible nightmares that have been perpetrated by the Christian church in regards to don't take the mark of the beast and you're going to get your head cut off, and get your head cut off, don't take the mark, and all this debate about what the mark of the beast is. And when you look at it in the scripture, it's very clearly the mark of the beast is nothing more than money that is printed or inscribed with the heads of state, or it just means printed money or printed coins. Very, very plain and simple. The mark of the beast, as revealed in the book of Revelation, simply means printed money.
And do you think printed money has any evil attached to it, or any residual problems attached to it?
Well, Yeshua, a lot of people misquote Yeshua and they say, Yeshua said that that money is the root of all evil. He didn't say money is the root of all evil. I'm quite sure that to put on Revolution Radio does require some money. I'm pretty sure to further the message of sustainability that you're trying to further does take some money. I'm absolutely certain that what I'm trying to do does take some money. What Yeshua said was the love of money is the root of all evil. Money is a tool. It's a tool that is necessary in our current system. So it's not bad to have it. It's not bad to earn it. And it's certainly not bad to use it for good purposes. But to love it, to make it an idol, to make it your main purpose, of course, would be analogous to evil. And it's an interesting question that you bring up. Does it have some residual familiar spirit type things to it? I've never pondered that. That's an interesting thought, and it's certainly possible. I don't know if I would be willing to say yes to it, but it's certainly something that would be an interesting discussion and mental exercise.
Yeah, there's evidently a demon attached to money.
His name is Mammon, I believe.
Mammon, that's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let me just offer you my opinion on money. Money has to be organic if we're going to get out of this ecological disaster scenario, because money that's natural and organic will keep us connected to nature. If we don't get back to the ways of nature and we stop toxifying the planet, we're all going to end up dead. And, it's pretty hard to have any sort of spirituality when you're not alive.
It is.
We got to get things in the right order. So if we're going to have money, it should be organic. And what I mean by that, it's got to be connected to seed, preservation of land, water, air, these sorts of initiatives. See?
I'm 100% in agreement with you, Brian.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be ubiquitous organic. We could have organic and fiat currency coexisting. But we have to have enough organic money to have food stores and to preserve the planet and reindustrialize in a natural way. So naturalize industry, naturalize the economy, naturalize our living systems. You see, and this is one part of my message. So to that extent, money is evil now because it's not connected to the mother. It's destroying the mother. Too many people are making money through processes that are toxifying the planet. And you can relate to that.
You give me something new to think about. I certainly concur with you, and I've made myself a note to look at the spirit of Mammon and see if that is study how it could be a continuing spiritual entity, nefarious entity interfering in our lives.
In my opinion, it is the biggest evil out there. The fact that it creates a wall between us. Before we used to, in the good old days when we lived in the garden, talk about the garden in the Bible, everything was there and it was abundant. Now we created money. Money is a wall between people and getting access to nature and the basics of life. And that's a big problem.
It'd be interesting to research the very origin of money.
Billions of people starve. We're growing food in their countries, Jeffrey, but they starve because they can't afford to buy it, and we're shipping it all over the rest of the planet. It's an absolutely ridiculous system.
It beggars description how completely crazy it is. It's unfathomable.
Yeah. So money it's been created evil. The Baal are actually the start of it. According to my friend James McCanney, the Baal have a lot to do with the money system now. And the
interesting.
Banks. The Baal, and they're in the Bible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, well, to me that's the key issue with money. We make some of it organic enough to save the planet, fix it, and we could replace all oil and gas with hemp. It's really that amazing, hemp. I don't care about getting high in hemp. It's not my thing. But to replace all the industry would be awesome.
I am not a person that partakes in marijuana. I don't smoke it. But I am 100% in support of the legalization of cannabis and hemp. And I don't know, I'm for the legalization of marijuana, but I have a hard time recommending the recreational usage of it.
I mean, yeah, everyone makes their own decisions in life, right? That's
true.
I'm a complete liberal in that respect. I mean, it does nothing for me, but hey, if it helps somebody else, go for it. Don't get addicted to it. I mean, nothing's good if you're addicted to it. Sugar's not good if you're addicted to it, right?
That's absolutely true.
We all want to maintain the ability to exist without absolutely needing things other than, I think, three things. We need God in our lives, we need nature, and we need each other. Those are the three basic needs of all humanity. We bring those three things together. I call it tri-energetics.
I have a hard time arguing against that.
I mean, and that's Yeshua. To me, that's what I get from the Bible. That's my message. That's what I get from it. And I'm not saying it's the only message to get from the Bible, but to me, this is my trinity of where we got to get back to. I call it foundational knowledge. And
I would agree that it is indeed foundational knowledge.
Yeah. So it makes sense to you. I don't know. The thing is about the Bible is that it doesn't explicitly say these things, but I'm always looking for people who can, like my friend Warren always says, oh yeah, there's something in the Bible that sort of relates to what you're saying. So
Right.
I like that. One of my favorite quotes from the Bible is the quote about the rich man getting into heaven. You know that? Oh, we'll talk about that after the break, Jeffrey. Fascinating discussion. Back in a few minutes, folks, with more of Jeffrey Daugherty, Christian Whistleblower. Welcome back, one and all, to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, with my special guest, Jeffrey Daugherty. He can be located at thechristianwhistleblower.com. A great site. I strongly recommend you check this guy out. He's got his great interview with George Noy there too, so very recent interview. This is the time in my show where I always talk about the importance of supporting Revolution Radio. We've got about 80 hosts offering their view of the planet. I believe it's a much more accurate representation of what's actually happening here, whether it's dealing with ecology, which is often the focus of my show, or whether it's about politics or economics or the banking system or political change systems. I mean, I think it's all here. I think that asking people to donate $5 a month so you can buy the archives, I think is probably your best bet in terms of supporting the station, because you win, because you gain the knowledge. You can download them, put them anywhere you want, on your phone, on your computer. Listen to them at your leisure, and you also help the station. So you help yourself and you help the station. So please, folks, if you can find $5 to get the archives, that would be great. And I understand there's also, for people who like silver, 1 ounce silver coins, there's a special on $50 donation. Will get you one of those this month. So there you go, folks. Please support Revolution Radio. Let's get back to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, are you with us?
I'm here.
All right. So we were talking about my favorite quote in the Bible, and it's about the camel and the rich man getting to heaven. The eye of the needle. Do you know that one?
I do. What does that mean to you, Brian?
Well, what it means to me, and one of the major messages of Yeshua was that there should not be poverty on this planet. And if you're rich and you're not out there helping the poor, there's something wrong, and you've blown your opportunity to get to heaven. That's what it means to me, because I know how this planet works, and I know how abundance can be created here, and there's no reason why anyone on this planet should be poor. No good reason, anyway. What does it mean to you, Jeffrey?
Well, it's interesting, because when I wrote the first book, Apostle Paul Antichrist, that verse was actually a big part of it, because in my research and in my study, and I can't 100% nail this down, but I'm probably 95, 96%, that the rich young ruler that those words were spoken to actually was Saul of Tarsus, and that was one of the 3 meetings that Saul, who later became the self-proclaimed Apostle Paul, actually was the rich young ruler. It's beyond doubt that his family was a very rich and wealthy family from the region of Tarsus, which was the textile region of the Roman Empire. I believe that my research shows that Paul's family was one of the leading defense contractors of the day. You know, Paul is painted as a humble tent maker when really he was probably closer to Dick Cheney and Halliburton. I mean, his family was, many people believe, the principal tent maker for the Roman army. So Paul was fabulously wealthy. You might even say filthy rich. And the fact that Yeshua spoke those words to him, and I believe, and this is a very central portion of my whole worldview, is that if you remember right before that discussion of the camel in the eye of the needle, Yeshua said to the rich young ruler, who I believe was Paul, he said, "Sell all you have and then come and follow me." And I believe that that was a legitimate, sincere offer from Yeshua to Saul of Tarsus, who would later become Paul, to become an apostle of Yeshua. And of course, Paul would not. He refused that because he didn't want to give up his great wealth, only to later, and Paul is mentioned 177 times, I think, in the New Testament, and the only person that ever called Paul an apostle was Paul. And I think that part of the psychology there was he rejected Yeshua's offer of apostleship only to decide later on, when he had a spiritual visitation from an entity that Yeshua called the adversary, and this entity leveraged that meeting between Yeshua and Paul. And Paul, I think, really, some ways in his somewhat twisted mind, thought that the apostleship that went to, I guess you could say, it went to Judas, and then it went to Matthias after Judas was gone. He really felt that it was his, and there is an attitude of entitlement in Paul as manifested in his writings, and it all goes back to that altercation where, Paul came and talked to Jesus, Yeshua as the rich young ruler, and Yeshua, of course, offered him the apostleship. He said no, and then Yeshua made the classic words about the love of money and how difficult it is for the rich to enter into the kingdom. And you're so right that it is so impossible. It's almost impossible for the rich to separate themselves from their wealth unless they have a spiritual revelation. And little do you know that, at least in my worldview, you hit on something that is not only about the rich and about the poor, but it's also about the very seed, you could say, of the beginning of this great monolith of Western civilization that has spawned the bankers and has spawned the fiat currency and has spawned all of this mammon-driven craze towards money and the incredible disparity between wealth and poverty, and a very few handful of families controlling the planet.
Yeah, one of my guests put it very quickly, very very succinctly. A guy named John Apsley, a great naturopath, regenerative medicine expert. He said, "Yeah, we gave up. We replaced God with money, and that's why I call it money God. I mean, Jeffrey, we have the most beautiful planet. If everybody had their basic needs met, we'd all be happy. We could live together. We could love each other. We could celebrate life and how great it is. We could imagine and we could connect with the Creator, which has done so much good for us. We could appreciate we don't appreciate anything anymore, Jeffrey.
We don't, and all of that could be easily accomplished with the defense budget of the United States.
Oh, I mean, we're going out of our way.
It could be accomplished with the debt that we used or the amount that we used to service the debt to the Fed, which is, don't get me started.
Yeah. So to me, that's why I believe money is the Antichrist. The way we're using money now, it basically, and it's rooted into everyone.
Absolutely.
It's rooted into it. It's controlling almost the consciousness of everyone right now. because in order to be good now, you actually, I believe in my life, I've done a lot of good things, but you get punished for doing good now.
Right, and I would submit to you that at least in modern terms, the very seed of that goes back to that fellow that we call the Apostle Paul.
Interesting. Yeah, well, it was a bad seed. I call it the buy sell seed.
Yeah.
The buy sell seed. This is the seed that's corrupted all the other beautiful seeds of knowledge. The knowledges of creativity, the arts. There's just so many things we could be doing as humans here that would bring us closer to the Creator. And instead, we're stuck on this money god, and it's just dragging us right down into hell. In my opinion.
Brian, it just the thought came to me that the beauty of our world and everything in it is displaced as soon as we start to put a price on it.
Exactly. You cannot monetize perfection. Yeah.
Not without paying a despicable price.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we're right on. Yeah, we're in very perfect alignment on that issue. I'm just, like I say, that's why I promote organic money and all that good stuff. So let's get back to fundamentals, okay, if you don't mind. Are we finished on the money thing? Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I think we've closed that loop.
Okay, great. The existence of evil in a universe created by a perfect, loving God. How does that work for you? How did that happen?
Well, it's interesting. I think George Norrie asked me a similar question. I think the way he phrased it was, is there a devil? And I see the two questions as kind of similar. And I don't know if we were talking about this off the air or if we talked about it on the air, but most of that which we call evil that each one of us deals with is, most of the biggest devil that we have to deal with is the one that we look at in the mirror every day. And most of what we call evil that we deal with individually has been created by ourselves individually. So I think that we didn't need God to create evil. I think that we, through our free moral agency, do create our own evil. We create our own problems, and like the salmon coming back home, that we have to deal with them. And there's also something to be said about, it's impossible to climb a completely smooth mountain. You have to have some juts, you have to have some cracks, you have to have some things sticking out. And I think that the divine uses, or at least leverages what we would call many times evil or misfortune, and that it's that which we use to actually grow and develop and our spirituality and move up in our spiritual ascension.
Yeah, Malfeas, so they call that in the Vedic tradition. The hard times are when you grow the most spiritually, because then you have to have the most faith, and you have to realize it's a lesson that you have to learn. Like loss of a loved one or something. One of the most beautiful people I know is a cousin of mine, and I've noticed this trend. I don't know if you've noticed it, but the most spiritually aligned people are the ones that usually are given the greatest challenges to overcome. And he lost a child, and to me that is probably one of the most difficult challenges, to lose a child, right? And
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, she was in her prime. She was 25. She was just going to get married. She just finished nursing school. Everything was lining up for her. Beautiful, big, extended family. They're all connected to Yeshua, or they live it. They're not just talkers. They do it. These people are beautiful people. The whole family is just amazing. And to lose that child, so the only way I can see it makes sense is that you're given these things when you're strong enough spiritually to deal with something that devastating. That's when you're given that, because the lesson of loss is that loss doesn't actually exist. For me, right? Loss is something happens out of sync or the way you expect it to be, but nobody ever dies, Jeffrey. We all live in the kingdom of God.
Right, I would agree. I think even science and physics teach us that energy never goes away. It may change form, it may dissipate, but it never dies, as you very accurately stated.
Yeah. So I think that this is, to me, when things are going bad for you, even though you're a good person, it's because God is trying to teach you something. This is actually a blessing. If you can, it's hard to look at it that way when you're in the middle of it, but when you get to look back on it and say, oh yeah, okay, I realized, I lost a child, but really I didn't lose a child. When somebody dies and they're close to you, like my dad passed away, he's still with me when I want him to be. I can connect with them. I don't know if you've lost anyone close to you, whether a family member or whatever. Do you feel a connection still to them?
I've lost grandparents. Unfortunately, I haven't lost either of my parents yet. But yes, I can feel a connection to them, and I actually have some people say it's a mental exercise. I prefer to think that it's also a spiritual exercise. I kind of picked it up from Napoleon Hill, of course, the great business leader, and people don't understand how great spiritual depth he had. In fact, I wrote a little ebook that's called The Spiritual Wisdom of Napoleon Hill, and he teaches a technique of having what he calls a council of advisors, and to meet with them and talk with them, of course, in a meditative state. And among my council of advisors are a grandfather and a grandmother that have passed away. So yes, I feel that they are with me, and that's one of the ways that I continue to access and try to continue to leverage their wisdom.
That is so beautiful, because that's exactly it. I can talk to my dad and I ask him questions, and he offers me advice. And that's it. I mean, that's beautiful, man.
Absolutely. I'm in alignment with that. I think it's, again, is it a spiritual exercise? Is it just a mental exercise? I don't really care. It works. It's effective. It's comforting. And I don't have to explain everything that works for me. I can just use it because it works, and it helps me.
Yeah, exactly. So my friend Warren Trammell's been listening to our interview, and he wanted to ask you a question. Can I bring him into the interview?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me just give him a call here. I think he's still there, hanging around. Should be with us in a second.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the Colburn Bible?
I don't believe I have, no.
No, okay.
It's always funny to me, Brian, when I'm on Coast to Coast, I've been on a few times, and it seems like everyone, and this isn't obviously directed towards Warren at all, but the people that call in, probably 60 to 70% of those people are very adamantly against me, and then I'll get between 2,000 and 5,000 emails after being on Coast, and there won't be 10 or 12 people that are against me in all of that massive email. So it always makes me wonder, why are 60% of the callers negative and less than 1% of all those thousands that write in by email? Of course, I prefer to think that the people that are against me aren't smart enough to read or write. Of course, I say that facetiously.
Well, I mean, you are, for a Christian, I find you're very well read, and you've obviously looked at other spiritual paths, which is a credit to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how you can present yourself as a person that is a teacher of any type of spirituality without having looked around. And I think that I've made even when I was a Pentecostal evangelist, one of the things I did was I had a week where I would teach about the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and at that time it was called the Worldwide Church of God, and I would preach about, showing about the teachings of those other places. So I've always looked at comparative religions, and in studying and doing research for that first book I wrote, you talk about the Vedas. There's a fascinating story in the Apostle Paul Antichrist. I think I've proven conclusively that the Apostle Paul actually murdered James, who took over for Yeshua when he left on the steps of the temple. And Josephus writes about it. And there's a fascinating discussion in some of the literature from India of this epic battle between Paul and James on the steps of the temple, and they're in vimanas and they're shooting rays at each other, and it's a very interesting and spectacular story, but it comes up with the same ending that Paul slew James. So when you said that to me off air, that immediately came to mind. So yeah, you have to read, you have to study, and if you only know what you think you know, then you don't really know anything. And I found out the more that I think I know, the more I realize I have to learn.
Well, you definitely want to check out the Colburn Bible. One of my regular guests, I call him the Living Tesla, James McCanney. He was actually called in to help translate this Bible.
How do you spell that?
Colburn, Kolbrine.
Kolbrine. Okay.
Yeah, I can. We could do it if you have time. We could do another show with James. James is a regular guest. He's a fascinating guy. I mean, you cannot have an interview with him and not learn something.
Well, great. I'll definitely be looking up the Colburn Bible.
Yeah, and it actually comes to you. It's a huge book, and it's based on texts found in England, northern England or Scotland or something, but it was hidden away. And it's just extra books that were excluded from the Bible.
Fascinating.
And there's also something called the Book of Jubilee. Have you heard of that?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. That's evidently an expanded version of Exodus? Is that your understanding of it?
Partially, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So what do you think of the Book of Jubilee? Do you know much about that one?
Yeah, I think the Book of Jubilee has a lot of good information in it. And, I guess I should talk about, my concept of the Bible. And if we want to talk Christianity, my concept of the New Testament is very much in alignment with that of Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson wrote that the New Testament contains writings of the most sublime mind of all time. It contains much that is called diamonds, and it also contains gibberish and rantings of much lesser minds, which Jefferson called dung. And I believe that the New Testament does have the words of God, it does have the words of the divine, it does have great truths, and remains a very profitable study for us. It contains a lot of diamonds, but it also contains a lot of dung, and we've actually compiled a version of the New Testament called the Diamond New Testament, which is an effort at removing the dung, which would include the teachings of Paul, and leaving the diamonds to shine. So I have no problem with Book of Jubilee. I have no problem. Even there's something in the news today about the Barnabas Bible, and I have no problem in eating the meat, so to speak, and spitting out the bones, or eating the fruit and spitting out the peels for our vegetarians. But I don't think something has to be 100% true for us to gain some truth from it.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, whenever we read a book, the energy in us connects with the energy of the book. And if you don't have the right energy, if you're not advanced enough, you're going to miss the message of an advanced book. No doubt about it. And if so that's what to me, that's what learning is all about. And that's why I believe it takes many lifetimes, because there's so much to learn in this place. I mean, the earth is an incredibly resourceful place, and just within nature alone, there's many lifetimes to learn of just all the plants and how they interact with them and all this kind of stuff. So, the shamanic life is a multi-life, and it's the same in the now. This gets to the issue of your incarnation, and that's a question I wanted to ask you. I almost forgot. Is reincarnation used to be in the Bible? Is that not true, or is that a falsehood?
No, that's true. There's a lot of what has not been put into what's called the New Testament canon, and a lot of people think that the compilation of the New Testament was done by a large and learned community, and it was a big committee that studied and vetted. And the reality is that there was one dude named Polycarp that compiled, edited, and published the New Testament. So
what was that name again?
Polycarp, Polycarp, and he was the guy that published the New Testament. So there's a lot of great books with a lot of great knowledge that were excluded. And, it always tickles me, Brian, and I don't mean to get off the subject, but, in the United States, in Canada, in the Western world, we fully and totally embrace the concept of the separation of church and state. Speaking of America, our founders came from England seeking religious freedom and not being dominated by a state-inspired religion. And yet, these same people that want to, defend church and state and the separation of church and state as holy have no problem carrying around under their arm the King James Bible that they pledge unquestioned allegiance to. And the King James Bible was the state. It was King James dictating to the church what they're going to believe and practice. So I find that to be incredibly oxymoronic.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. Okay, Warren is with us. He's actually been sitting in the background for a bit. Warren, how you doing?
Very good. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, we're here good. But when you're typing, you have to go mute, buddy, because it comes through.
I keep forgetting about that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Well, don't mute now, though. Don't mute, because I want you to ask Jeffrey your question. Jeffrey, this is Warren Trammell, the best inside political guy I know.
Hello, Warren. Be glad to entertain any question that you might have for me. I'll do my best to answer it.
Oh, golly. I have a lot more questions than I do answers.
Me too, my friend.
I had recently attended a church, and the preacher was actually kind of a part-time preacher, but he's also a teacher at a local small Christian college, and he taught Greek and Hebrew. And he didn't really tell us as much about that as I would like to, but there was a comment tonight with Daugherty talking about Genesis, the very first verse of Genesis.
Right.
And said, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. And when you look up the word God in the Greek and the Hebrew, and the translations include a one all-powerful God, but it also includes male and female counterparts of God, and which would indicate that the heavens and the earth were kind of created by collaboration of God and His angels and spirits He had around Him. And God was kind of like the general contractor, and when He said go and create the heavens and the earth, all of His male and female angels or other beings went out and did what He wanted them to do. So I thought that was just very, very interesting. I never thought of God as being a multifaceted person or power, whatever you want to call it. I never thought of it being a multifaceted thing.
Well, that's an interesting take.
Well, and does that not align with what you said earlier, Jeffrey, about the Elohim and the fact that it was a group of I call them creator beings who created the earth?
Well, I am very much strictly a textual guy. I stay as close to the text as I possibly can. I don't expand upon it or extrapolate it on it unless it seems like the text is demanding it to do so. And while I can certainly understand, where Warren's coming from, and certainly don't, begrudge him that interpretation, my position would be that the word Elohim, just as defined within the Strong's exhaustive concordance, means gods and goddesses, deities, male and female. So why I certainly don't doubt that there was a committee that did. And it's interesting, the last time that someone gave me that analogy about a general contractor, crazy world, and we talked about Aleister Crowley earlier, and that was once said to me by Jimmy Swaggart, believe it or not, that very same analogy of God being the general contractor and the others. And yeah, so I don't think I think we're more on the same page than we are on different pages on that.
That was the first time I had heard that, and so I thought it was a very, very interesting analogy.
I would agree with you.
And you think about it, the male and female spiritual beings, creator beings, as Brian calls them, to me makes sense because in the creation of the earth, he made human, earthly, male and female models. So,
I think you're exactly right, Warren, because when you come down to Genesis 1:26, it says, "And the Elohim created mankind in their own image, male and female created they them." So, I mean, if you work that backward, Socratically, humankind is created male and female. The Elohim created humankind in their image. The Elohim are male and female. So it works both ways, and it seems to make things much simpler if we just let the text say what the text says instead of bringing our preconceived notions into it.
Absolutely. Every Bible scholar I've ever listened to says that exact thing, that don't try to extrapolate anything and don't try to make a commentary on it. Just read it for what it is. And you can go back to the Greek and the Hebrew, and it will explain it in more detail in the original Hebrew. And so you really get more exact meaning out of it when you go back to the original Hebrew. And that's something I have always wanted to do in my life, because I always felt like that there were words in Scripture that if you went back to the Hebrew, it would mean a lot of different things than what it actually says in King James.
I absolutely agree with you. And one of the few things that I took from Bible college that has really been useful to me day to day, long term, is a silly little saying that says a text without a context is a pretext, and that's so true.
I've heard that many times.
My first time. Okay, guys, I got another question for Jeffrey. Thanks so much for taking Warren's question. Are there any nature spirits, elementals mentioned in the Bible?
That's a fascinating discussion. It's so fascinating that you would mention that, Brian, because we had talked, again, I can't remember what we talked about before the show and what we talked about during the show, but we had talked about demonic regeneration or, balancing unbalanced spirits. And I've recently been dragged kicking and screaming into the paranormal realm, i.e., I know people hate the term that are in there, but ghost hunting and that type of a thing, paranormal investigation. And there's so much emphasis on, is it a ghost? 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 And one of my good friends named Cliff Desmond, who actually does my voiceovers for my radio program, he asked me this question that just slammed into me, and I know it's a truth. He asked me, well, what if some of these spirits that they're saying are ghosts, what if they're really just nature spirits, elementals? Maybe they're just there in an observatory nature. So I don't know that there's anything explicitly defining or an explicit occurrence of a nature spirit within the Bible. I haven't seen it, but I certainly believe that there are nature spirits, and I'm convinced that Yeshua knew and understood and probably was in communication and certainly harmony with the nature spirits. And that's probably the next part of my expansion of my knowledge, is being able to recognize and work with and talk with and converse and learn from the spirits of nature, because there certainly are. I mean, the earth itself is a divine feminine spirit. So I can't think of a chapter and verse to give you, Brian, but certainly it's got to be there. And I read the Bible 150 times, but I haven't ever read it looking for that. So maybe in reading 151, we'll come up with something.
Well, I saw them. I saw them when I was young, and I had another guest, a beautiful soul named Michael Baker, who set up the most incredible eco-village in India, and he said he used to see them as a child too. So, and they're very well known in eco-villages. There's a place called Findhorn in Scotland, and they create the most amazingly nutritious and good food, and they're very prominent in all of the shamanic cultures. So yeah, I mean, if they're not,
and they're so
Bible,
prominent.
The thing is, Jeffrey, I don't believe that all the wisdom of Yeshua is in the Bible.
Oh, there's no way. I mean, even John himself, who was the very last writer, the Apostle John was the very last writer of the New Testament. He wrote 40 years after everybody else was finished writing, so he had a unique perspective. John said that if everything that Yeshua said and taught was written down in books, the world would not be large enough to contain all the books. Obviously, that's a little bit, he's employing hyperbole to some extent, but it just goes to show you that there's no possible fathomable way that all of the wisdom of Yeshua would be confined within the 66 books of what we call the Holy Bible today. And what is so saddens me, Brian, is that so many people will hear me make a statement that there's much wisdom of Yeshua that's not included in the Bible and say that's blasphemous and say it's a terrible thing to say. But how sad it is that we would believe that the omniscience of Yeshua could be limited to 66 letters compiled by us poor, pitiful, limited humans.
Can I ask Jeffrey a question?
Oh, go for it, Warren.
Okay.
I just want to say I totally agree. I mean, any words cannot describe the higher levels of the universe. It's pure energy. It's experience. You just can't go there.
In fact, in my experience, Brian, at the very highest levels of spirituality, there is no sound. It's just all empathic, if you will.
Yeah, in vibration.
In vibration, absolutely.
This is what I'm blessed to have vibration. Like just when you were talking about the fact that the wisdom of Yeshua was not all contained in the Bible, I got a vibration. And that's
ridiculous to think that it's all contained within the Bible. I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's my cue that what you're saying is true. That's my message from wherever. Okay, good. Go ahead, Warren.
Going back to the animals, I thought about this. Remember when, if it's true, and you might comment on how true the story is, that Noah was herding all of the animals into the ark. How did he? Did God give Noah a special ability to communicate with the animals, or did God Himself command the animals to go into the ark? And Noah was just there holding the door open, and God actually told the animals, or was there some special? Did God give Noah some special communication skills to communicate with the animals? And how did He actually separate? Just to have two, just to have a male and a female duck, or a male and female lion and tiger, or whatever. But what was that communication between the animals and Noah or God to get them in the ark? What kind of animal communications was that?
Well, Warren, I can safely say to you that I have no idea. But I think as you were speaking, this just came to me as an impulse, kind of like Brian's vibration. I think that back in the beginning, I think that there was much more of a communication between humans and the animal kingdom, and perhaps the results of living this world and destroying this world and doing the things we've done to it has limited us in this communication. But I wouldn't at all doubt that there was much more communication between people of days of old and the Bible and the animals. And just to kind of sound silly, but I recently made a lot of changes in my diet and a lot of changes in my lifestyle, and something just as simple as I have a cat, and that cat has been transformed from just a pet or something that I own to I really now realize that cat is a soul and a being, and he's become more of a friend and a partner than a pet or something that I own. So I think that the more that we are in tune with Source or with the divine, and the closer we can get to that, I think that our communication with all beings and even with the earth itself is greatly expanded.
Sure. Well, the question you always get is, will there be animals in heaven?
That's a good question.
and I've heard answers on
Is there
both
anything in
sides.
the Bible about that, Jeffrey, to your knowledge?
You know, I don't, you know, and I don't want to, you know, get off and step on anybody's toes, but I don't know that, you know, heaven is this mysterious, far-off place that we've been taught that it is. I mean, when I read the Scripture literally, when everything's said and done, you know, the divine comes down, you know, to this planet, and we live here, you know, together forever in a perfected and a recreated, you know, earth and creation. So I don't know too much about this place we call heaven, because I don't see a whole lot of it, you know, discussed within the text. And again, I try to stay with the text, so maybe that's just a gap in my knowledge. But you know, I really don't have a lot to say about heaven, because I don't have enough evidence of it to really discuss it in any great depth.
It exists here, Jeffrey. I believe that. Some people live in heaven. It's all about connecting with Source, with nature, and with each other. When you have those three loves, you are living in heaven. And
yeah,
the more people who can do that, the more people who can do that, then you create an energy, and that's what they're doing in places like Findhorn, I believe. I've talked to the people who live there, and they're pretty much angels on this planet, in my opinion.
And it goes back to the great, you know, Kabbalistic axiom, you know, as above, so below.
Yeah. In both directions.
In both directions, as below, so above, right? And I mean, Yeshua talked about that. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, you know, as it is in heaven. So it was, you know, I think you're right. I really do. Yeah,
you want to keep the dark side out of you? Love. Love everything. Love everyone. Forgive. Listen to what Yeshua said.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to do, but it's easy to understand.
Right, and he said that the divine did not give us the spirit of fear. And when you think about so much of Christian theology is dedicated to scaring us straight and scaring us to be good because we're going to get left behind, or scaring us because we're not going to be able to make heaven. And all these things that create fear, I go back to the words of Yeshua. He said that the true divine did not give us a spirit of fear. So I have a little bit of difficulty believing that things that are so fear-oriented come from the being that Yeshua said doesn't give us that spirit.
Doesn't the rest of that scripture go something, did not give us a spirit of fear, but the spirit of love and of a sound mind?
Power, grace, and a sound mind.
Right. Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Beautiful.
I'm
well,
glad
okay, Warren, I just want to, I got to get to this question, because this is the one that gets Jeffrey most in trouble, and I love people who are willing to stand out and be controversial, because I've done it all my life.
No, I can't. I wonder what's coming next.
Well, you said that you sort of intimated. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But from listening to your interview with George Noory the other day, that Jesus or Yeshua could have been created by an interaction between Mary, the mother, and an alien presence.
No, what I actually said was all I did was read the literal rendering of the verses that Dr. Luke wrote about the impregnation of Mary, if you will. And basically all I read was what the scripture literally says, that her womb was seized, she was overtaken by a paralyzing presence, and that something of supernatural origin was deposited in her womb. And I found it, remarked that it was interesting that a doctor writing would not use the words for baby, not use the words for infant, not even use the word for human, but he used the word something of supernatural origin. So just from the text of the New Testament alone, I think that it certainly gives us something to think about.
Right, right. Okay, so you didn't. I thought you used the word alien, and because George's show is all mostly about aliens. So
No,
I thought.
my new book is called The Final Message of the Last Apostle, and part of that is the alien agenda in the New Testament. And talking about that was that if you look at the classic alien abduction outlines, I think it's Nyman's and Bullard's, and it talks about all the things that are common with what we call alien abductions. It's there's a promise of good things, like Luke recorded the angel saying to Mary, "Blessed are thou among women." So it was giving her, a kind of a pep talk. And then they are overtaken and paralyzed, as the New Testament says that Mary was overtaken and paralyzed. They are often subjected to invasive medical examinations, as the New Testament says that Mary was subjected to. And many times something is deposited in or left behind in their bodies, and that's what the New Testament says was done to Mary. So my point there was that the Apostle John, writing in the final message of the last apostle, literally the last words of the New Testament, I believe that he showed us that within the New Testament, and especially and exclusively surrounding the great events in the life of Jesus, there is an unmistakable, undeniable pervasiveness of UFO, ET, and alien imagery. So that was the point that I was making there on Coast to Coast.
All right. Yeah. Okay. That's very gutsy. I'll tell you that much. I mean, I have no issue with it myself. I know a lot of people would see that as somewhat of a, and some of the callers were pretty angry.
They were, but they're yelling at me, but they're not my words. All I did was read the original Greek rendering, so they really should holler at Dr. Luke or possibly Polycarp, who edited and compiled those books that we call the New Testament.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of how you defined higher realms. I mean, really, I mean, I think there's many realms in higher levels. I mean, this is and there's many ways to describe it, and I look for unity. I try to find unity in words and not difference. Focus on the unity and not the difference, and then we can all come together and realize this. Like I say, we all connect a little bit differently to source.
Right, and the prophet Daniel said that the words of prophecy are sealed up to the time of the end. And we've always thought that it meant that God was arbitrarily keeping us from knowledge, but I've come to believe, and this is also certainly permissible within the language in Daniel, that the words were not sealed up in the sense that they were kept from us, but it's not until now in this generation, possibly the generation before us, that we have the cultural, scientific, and technological context to be able to understand the things that were described in the book of Daniel, the things that were described in the book of Revelation, the things that are described in these what I call the alien imagery within the New Testament. Now that we understand what we understand, we're able to look at these things, and yet somehow we insist. We got to remember the guys that wrote that Bible, even the New Testament, were riding down dusty trails on the back of donkeys. And here we are driving down the road in smart cars with smartphones connected to the World Wide Web. And yet, when we look at Bible prophecy, we're still confining ourselves to the first century mindset as if we were still on the back of a donkey on a dusty trail. And if we can step outside that box and get to a place of objectivity and look again at the presentation of the prophetic scriptures with the context of what we now know, it would, I think, at least be a profitable exercise for us to do so.
Well, I think your message is very refreshing. I think you're a man of great integrity, and I just get I connect. I'm also very intuitive and very empathic, and I see nothing in you that is not good. So I think people would profit from your message, anyone who is Christian, and I want people to know how to connect with you, because we're getting near the end of the show here. So how do people connect with Jeffrey Daugherty and his great wisdom?
Well, I don't know about the last part, but they can get a hold of me at I keep it simple. It's jeffreydaugherty.com, and it's REY, jeffreydaugherty.com.
Maybe spell it out because it's a unique spelling of that word.
Sure, JEFFREY, DAUGHERTY.com, or ChristianWhistleBlower.com, or if you Google Apostle Paul Antichrist, I come up right on the top of the searches. And I'll also be out starting in a couple months, run a nationwide tour that's going to last for years. So it's very likely I'll be in a city or a town near just about everyone that's listening to us at some point. So JeffreyDaugherty.com, ChristianWhistleBlower.com. You can find everything that you need, probably more than you wanted at those places.
And because you've written a number of books too, right?
I've written 3 books, yes.
Yeah. So that's another way to connect with you.
Absolutely.
And so tell me a bit about this tour. I heard you talking about you're looking for someone to help you out with a van or a bus or something.
I actually just purchased one this last weekend. I was able to purchase a 25-foot little motorhome, and Rooney the cat and myself will be boarding that. And our first date as it stands right now is in March in the city of Columbus, Ohio, and we have about 9 of the 12 months full with conferences and seminars and speaking at churches and spiritual groups. So, if people do want to have me come speak, it's now's the time to get us booked. But we're going and we're talking at these conferences. We're doing some book signings along the way, and we're also going to be going to all of the great spiritual sites, the paranormal sites, all things wild, weird, and wonderful, making videos from that, putting them on the internet. So, many people have always wanted to be able to go to these great spiritual sites, but it's, not practical for them to do so. So we're going to go for you, and we'll put it on video, and hopefully it'll in some way be like you're there with us.
Are you going to go to that ranch out west where the regular UFO sightings
the Skinwalker Ranch, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that should be interesting.
It definitely should be interesting.
Yeah, I've heard so many things about that place, and that's out. It's where is that place?
It's in southern Utah.
Okay. And that's gonna if you haven't been there before, they've got some pretty interesting shamanic figures out there.
Absolutely.
And they can evidently there are some nasty entities out there that they've had issues with, and they're experts in how to exorcise these whatever you want to call them, demons or whatever. It's a fairly common thing to have happen. Is that your understanding of this place? I've actually heard them on a few shows.
There's definitely some goings on there, Brian. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, so wow, this is so you're going to do the Alberta Rouge trip. You're going to take off, and you're going to spread the good word.
Absolutely, going back to my evangelistic roots, and you mentioned Star Trek earlier. I think it's probably going to be something like a 5-year mission. So we've sold everything, downsized everything, and like I said, it's myself and Rooney the cat in the RV and headed down the highway, and hopefully it's a highway of enlightenment and fun, and it certainly won't be boring, Brian. I'm certain of that.
Well, the great thing about living in a world that's all connected is that you can check in with me or anyone about how it's going, and
absolutely.
That's the great part. I mean, I've had people on from New Zealand. I mean, it's just incredible of this world we live in now, how easy it is to communicate. So hopefully you'll keep in touch with us and let us know how your journey's coming, and your great triumphs and your great struggles. That's all part of growing.
It is indeed, and it'd be my pleasure to stay in contact with you for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, what was my last question here? Oh, okay. This is one of my theories on. I'm not sure how you envisage the revelations, but I have issues with religious texts that basically lead people to believe that the end is inevitable. Because when you think the end is inevitable, why would you want to strive to prevent the end? Right? And do you see the Bible in that way? The Revelations saying that there's an inevitable end of this planet, that it's sort of predetermined, and so why try to change anything? Why try to make things better?